Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Money Healing Podcast. This is your host, Nadine Zamot. Today's interview is with financial therapist and author, Bari Tessler, who happens to be the author of one of my favorite money books, The Art of Money. Hello, Bari, and welcome to the Money Healing Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Nadine. I'm very happy to be here.
Personally, I think you're a genius. And like I was sharing before we hit record, you are a breath of fresh air in the financial wellness industry. While everyone talks about restriction and willpower and strong arming ourselves into this awesome, like, do this so that you can do that and become wealthy, you are an advocate for bringing our wisdom and our heart and our soul with us on our money journey. Because the way Bari, I've read her book many times. I have it on Kindle and as a hard copy, so that's a big thing for me. And I've also gone through your program, The Art of Money. You have such a knack for blending emotional literacy along with financial literacy. And like I said, like you are such an advocate for loving ourselves into transformation as opposed to like blaming and shaming and like just breaking our unique creative soul into discipline.
So well said. Thank you.
That's my intro. That's my intro here. And as you know, I mean, typically interviews start off by asking you about your story of origin. And with regards to this topic, it's with the money work that you do. But as I was like just meditating on this particular podcast episode yesterday, I have a different kind of question. I'm going to come at your origin story, but from a different angle. So after years of consuming your content, your book, your course, your Instagram, I get this like feeling or this impression that you have such a beautiful, wholesome, and even sensual approach to life. Have you always been like this? And what is your relationship to like the essence of life, to sensuality, and how did that happen? How did this beautiful, yummy relationship begin? Like you have such a different outlook on slowness and enoughness.
I love your question. I mean, yes, I've always had a connection with my sensual nature. Always. Like sensuality has been important to me from a very, very, very young age. I just feel it's part of who I am and how I feel and sense and interact with the world, right? So there's always been that, but it was probably, you know, I was shaped a bit certainly by having a very tough love father. So that's one of the pieces, right, that I've always had to bump up against and have crafted myself, you know, in reaction to and rebellion to. You know, he definitely had loving sides to him. And my mother too was very loving, but also could be very tough in certain ways as well, right? But my own nature has always been more sensual, body oriented, you know. I definitely lost my way and then had to find it again. But even as a teenager, I would, and you've probably heard this part of my story, but I would go into my room and play music and dance out every emotion and then come out and then be able to articulate and explain what I was thinking and feeling and all of that, right? And that all led me to somatic psychotherapy, right? And to that journey in my 20s where I, as a 16-year-old, and I'm going to come back to the sensuality piece, but as a 16-year-old, I asked my parents if I could go to therapy. And they sent me to a male therapist and a talk therapist, and both didn't work, but it was a beginning, you know, it was a beginning to this road. And I learned what wouldn't work for me. And then I would continue to, you know, go into my room and dance and do that. And then it was when I started hearing about authentic movement, which I would say is a form of dance movement therapy and somatic psychology that I heard about in my early 20s and started doing. And it was the first time I could then remember how to listen to my body. Like remember when I was hungry, when I was full. I'd been overriding so much of that like so many teenage girls do, right? And then I heard there was graduate programs, and that's what got me on that. I mean, there's so much more to that. Also, the graduate program that I was studying in really integrated Eastern and Western philosophy, ritual, practice into everything. So while they required us to do some kind of meditation, most people did sitting on a cushion meditation, and I would always do movement meditation. I did authentic movement, extra trainings, and I led groups, and that type of deep listening to my body and following that through movement or sound. That authentic movement practice was huge for me. So, and I grew up as a dancer.
I'm sure a lot of the listeners know, like, what I do is money coaching, but it really isn't about accumulating wealth. And that's a value that I feel like you also share just through consuming your work. It's really about expressing ourselves authentically in the world, but also enjoying this life. It's not just
no, that's never been my thing. Even though some of the folks in my community earn that much every year and more, or came from wealthy families, but I work with folks all over the income spectrum, and also coming from all different backgrounds and lineages as well. But I've never been someone who's like, we're going to only work on earning. For me, earning is a really important piece, but it's one piece. It's one piece in your entire relationship to money. Yeah. Just one. And, I have folks that are high earners, but they overspend. I have folks that would consider themselves under earners. So we're working on that. I mean, earning is important. And for some of us, we do need to look at that and heal that and come up with creative ways. But for me, it's always been about, how do you create a livelihood that you love? And money's a piece of it. My equation, and there's not numbers for this, I'm always saying whenever I'm making a big money decision or life decision, I'm looking at the money part, I'm looking at the time, I'm looking at the energy, I'm looking at my family, what phase we're in, and I'm looking at health. And there's probably more in that, but those are the 5 things that I'm always trying to understand when I'm making any big move. And money is one part of it, but it's, again, one piece of it. And energy and time and family and health are so important. Yeah.
Yeah, so important. Off the recording, like just before, we were talking about 2 spectrums of the financial quote unquote wellness industry. We've got gurus that are all about like restriction and budgeting and do this and do that. On the other side of the pendulum, we've got all these people that are quite, I don't know, like fixated on manifesting it. But just I would just going to the first side of the pendulum, the people that are very focused on suppressing our instincts, suppressing our emotions. But instead, you are one of the first people in this industry, one of the OGs that say, no, you invite them along. You invite along your instincts, your emotions, your wisdom, what your body is saying. So what can you tell us about this unique and gentle and so profound approach to money?
Yeah, I have to go back to, my 20s when I was training as a therapist, and my favorite topics were sensuality, sexuality, body, food, intimacy, relationships, grief, and death. Those were my topics, right? And then when the school loan came due, and I graduated, school loan came due, and I was like, wait a second, we never talked about money. How is this even possible, training to be a therapist? How did we, really, how did we not talk about our emotions around money, what our money story is, where it came from, how it's playing out today, how to start a private practice and charge, and on and on and on, right? So during that time, I started getting out the first money books. And there were 2 wonderful ones, Money and the Meaning of Life by Jacob Needleman, and Your Money or Your Life with Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez.
Oh,
right?
Vicki. Yeah.
So those are 2 were the books. Everything else was written by older men, white men, who were really into tough love. There's one right way. This is how you do it.
One right way.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's all about, saving in a certain way, living within your means, and investing, and no debt. So, and not,
debt is bad, saving's good.
Exactly. Like it was so, and I was like, okay, well, those pieces are important, but it's just one part of the story. And also, what is with this one way? And, my whole body was like, no, and also my whole body
that's
was
awesome.
like,
your body was like, no.
was like, no, fucking no, no. There's other ways, and I'm going to bring in intuition and creativity and ritual and deeper meaning and all these practices that I was living as I was training in my somatic psychology program, right? So I needed to bring all of that in, but also this tough love. No, I'd gotten enough of it from growing up with my father. He would send me out for a weekend and say, go get a job, apply to 5 places, come back and tell me and get a job, and that's all fine. I learned some hard lessons from that. I hated it. And there was no guidance or teaching of this is how you go in an interview. What kind of work do you want to do? What would be in alignment with your values? None of that. Right. So it's just, it was more, it was tough love upon tough love. So even though I can pull out the money lessons from that, I just knew that wasn't my way. So, now everyone calls it trauma informed everything. But back then it was just somatic therapy, somatic psychology, which is slow down, check in with yourself, listen, what do you notice? What is your right rhythm? What is the right pacing for you? Do you need to break things down into small bite-sized chunks? Now, Peter Levine, his first book came out when I was graduating in graduate school in my 20s.
That's a good coincidence.
Yeah, but we didn't even study his work. We were studying all these other wonderful somatic therapists who came before him. So, meaning concepts of the trauma-informed or titration, we didn't learn those terms. It was just we were saying them in a different way. So all the things that I've been bringing to the work, which is, not only bring your own intuition and you need to find your right ways and what works for you. And we're all different. So here's an entire foundation. Here's my 3-phase methodology. It's the foundation. Learn it. Money healing, money practices, and money maps. You may be missing 1 or 3 of them, or, some people are really good at doing the numbers and they were terrified to look at their own money story. Other people in my community know their money story inside and out. They keep playing the patterns over and over, but what they're not doing is they're getting so overwhelmed so quickly that they didn't know how to bring in the somatic tools, right?
Yeah, wow.
And you need those before you're going to sit down and learn a bookkeeping system or hire someone to show you how to use one or reach out to a financial planner and so on. So, I teach a whole foundation that you then practice for the rest of your life, right? But you don't teach every single step. You have to craft it so that it works for you. Do you want a daily money date for 5 minutes to start and then build 15 minutes and then 30 minutes twice a week? What does it look like for you? So I give, the whole foundation, and then you have to craft it based on your own intuition, which may take time to come back to, right? May take some practice, right?
Time. And so many people are so impatient these days.
Well, that's been going on since I've been doing this work for 22 years. Everyone's wanted that. It's also quick fix. And for me, yes, some things happen incrementally and then you'll get a big leap. I've had that experience where a lot of my change happens in small steps and then I get a big leap. But people are wanting the quantum leaps all the time or the quick fixes. And I'm like, I'm not your person. There are other people that do that. But you know what? Okay, go do that if you really want. Most people crash and burn. Although some people's natures are more just quantum leapers, right? But I'm more slow, steady, incremental steps. Right. So we're talking all around lots of different parts and pieces of this, of why I needed the more gentle, loving approach, listen to your own rhythm, slow it down, and that came innately from my somatic training as well. It was also I wasn't getting what I needed from these traditional finance books. It was just
So you did your own.
I did my own. So I did. That's what it was. I was reading it. It was missing so much for me. And, because I was steeped in such incredible training from Naropa University, even though they taught us nothing about money and business, I had this foundation that I feel saved me. It changed my life. It gave me the tools and skills and practices to live a life with all the ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And so I knew I needed to bring all of that to my relationship to money, and then a money methodology that I could bring to other folks. So that's a teeny bit about that. Yeah.
Something that you mentioned that is just so big for me is that, like, similar to you, I'm not someone that's like, come, I'm gonna like make you do like 100K in like 3 months, or like, these big quantum leaps that you're saying are like everything that's quite, I feel, is toxic in this industry these days. Like, join my program and you're going to save this, you're going to make this money, whether it's a business coaching program or a money coaching program, whatever it is. But what I really, really resonate with what you do is the intangible money results, the intangible results that don't reflect in your bank account per se, but they have such a big effect on you as a person and on your relationships. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I've been having to figure that out from day one, right? Because marketing, messaging, and I probably could give, 1,000 different examples of what people receive by doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And there are certainly people who make more money, pay off debt, can buy a house.
That's not the point.
That's not the point. No, that's all great. People love it because they're very happy for those things, right? But it's not going in with make 6 figures in your first year, or your net worth equals your self-worth. BS, or always increase your prices. BS, like I've increased my prices in some places and I've decreased in others, so, right. So, there's a lot of savvy stuff that we don't know how to do that is helpful to learn, when you're running a business with personal finance. But to the non-tangible things, people sometimes call them soft skills, which is silly to me, but I think in the corporate world, that's what they call it. But in my world, it's, how do you define money success, or having a healthy relationship to money, or becoming an adult with money? These are things that I can never define for you. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
they're up to each person that I work with.
It's very unique.
It's very unique, right? And depending on what life phase you're in, kids, how many, where you live, what's going on with your health, on and on and on, your age, all these things. So, when I say to people, how do you define that? How do you define healthy relationship to money or money success? Some people say, I learned how to have loving, compassionate, not fighting conversations with my spouse around money. And I say, that's amazing. Exactly. Amazing. When couples can do that, they're moving mountains. I've always said that, right? Just that, right? Or that you can learn that what set of emotions, or the cocktail of emotions that comes up for you, around money. Not just what they are: shame, anger, guilt, sadness, right? Anxiety, right? But actually learning how to work with them in the moment, before you're going to, have a money conversation, or during it, or afterwards as a debriefing. Like, when people can walk away from my work with tools and practices around that, the money emotions aren't going to go away. Will they decrease? You bet. Can you catch them before? Yes. Will you still maybe go into some strong ones? Sometimes, but you learn tools so that you can be with them in the moment and not be so afraid and not shut down and not get overwhelmed, right? And not have them get so big. You can learn tools on how to name them, sit with them, and then you can go from there. Well, now what are the practical steps to do? You can learn how to have money dates. You can learn how to have, this is not intangible stuff for me. This is like, this is very real stuff. How do you make a good money decision? People can come to you and be like, I don't know if I can afford your year-long program. I don't know, And so I say at the end of the year, you will know, which is everything from being able to do a body check-in in the moment. And you don't end there. You're not like, what am I feeling? Oh, I want, okay, I'm done. That's part of it. You also need to know your numbers. You also need to bring a set of questions to ask yourself in small, medium, and large purchases, right? I mean, I don't know if these are tangible, intangible, but and they're all overlapping for me at this point.
I'm with you on them being
Yes,
tangible, right?
yes,
And it's just like people want the big numbers, the big like, wow, she made this, that person made this, I want that
yeah.
too. But I just want to kind of like hammer in the importance of these small wins, like how to make a financial decision. That is so important.
It's
That is in alignment with you, you
Yes, it's
know?
huge. You know, when you're going to buy a car, when you're going to buy a home, when you're going to buy a pair of boots, when you're doing online shopping, these small, so I've always said my tools are really simple, but when they're actually practiced, they're profound. So all
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
these little moments, right, of mindfulness, understanding, clarity, savviness, they shift how we feel from day to day, moment to moment. And
Yeah.
again, so going back, that's what I'm all about, you know, is giving people all of these small tools in all the daily money moments so that they're prepared. It doesn't mean we're not going to get a curveball. It doesn't mean we don't plan, because planning, you know, because you get the curveballs, it means plan. But life's still going to happen. And then you're given tools on how to work with curveballs, how to work the emotions, all of that. So those small little moments add up to really significant change.
They add up to a
They add up
life.
to a life. They do.
Yeah,
They do.
they add up to a
They
life.
do. Yes.
You know, like just people are sold this idea that you're going to be healed. You know, check mark, done, healed. But I always say healing to me personally, as someone that has had a lot of money stuff, healing to me looks very different because before, if I got a bill that was $20 more than what I expected it to be, I would go into this downward spiral and I would make it mean so many things about my worth and my value and how good I am as a person or whatever. But now it's like the healing to me looks like that doesn't happen anymore. I just understand that this is what my brain is telling me, this is what my trauma is telling me, and it's no longer a curveball as you put it. Whereas, you know, with the more and more healing, like it's like a layer of an onion. Now it's maybe 20 grand. That puts me in a curveball situation
Exactly.
where it's supposed to be 20. So
Yes, and that's healing is such an interesting thing, because I think we've now like jumped on this bandwagon of, as you said, like we're going to heal and be done. You know, like
yeah.
I think it's a lifelong journey. It doesn't mean we can't have big shifts. It doesn't mean we can change patterns that aren't working for us, and on and on and on, right? I love that example that you gave. I mean, you're going into some what if a trauma, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, you know,
Yeah.
patterning that you go into, right? And now it's not happening there, but is it happening for a much larger amount? Yeah, you know. And
Of
then
course.
anytime there's
Yeah.
a new thing, when we were audited by the IRS, I definitely went into a fight, flight. I went into the fight, flight, freeze,
All of them. The all fours, four Fs.
for a few weeks, you know, and it took me to unravel. That was a bigger one, right? So, you know, even though my 3 phases are money healing, money practices, money maps, you don't finish money healing and you're done and then you move on to money practices.
I'm healed
now.
now. Yeah, like that doesn't happen.
You do a chunk of work, you get some wonderful tools, and then you bring them. I've had so many people say, when I go to sit down and learn a bookkeeping system, or I'm in a financial planner meeting, the moment I notice I'm starting to glaze over or check out, or, you know, I can go, oh, wait a second, body check in, or I'm going to go to the bathroom because that's a great place to do one, or whatever you have your tools to calm yourself down in that moment to help you be more present, right? And I'm still learning new things. I learned new things about my money story when I was writing the book. That whole chapter on it's about money, but it's never about money. And the peace around power with my father was new. It wasn't new information for me, but I was able to articulate it in a new way.
Yeah, and you were processing, you know, you're presenting to people. Like, I know something, but then when I write copy about it, I'm like, my relationship to this particular thing is changing just as I put it out there.
Yes, and we're still doing our own work, and I have to eat my own medicine often. You know, sometimes I have phases where I'm just like gliding along no big issues, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm in something again, A few years ago, this wasn't a big thing that I was in, but I realized that my whole life growing up, I thought I was identified as a spender in my family. Right. So that's what I was given, where my siblings were more the savers. They're more frugal, like my mom. I was more like my dad, but that was given a negative connotation, Again, I wanted things. I had desires. I liked lots of things, Didn't mean I was overspending. It just mean I had a lot of desires. And it wasn't until my 30s where I learned how to save. And my husband and my son, they call me a squirrel, like where I'm really good at squirreling away money, exactly. And so it's just, you can have a financial identity from your childhood, and your family of origin can still be like, oh yeah, Barry's the spender, Barry's the, in your own family, you can have a different financial identity. But a few years ago, I was like, wait a second, I'm a spender and I'm also a saver, damn it, and
yeah, the and you can have an and.
Yes.
So for me, my money wounding, if you want to call it that, it presented itself the opposite to you. So I grew up in a family where saving money is good, spending money, no matter on what, even if it's on a bill, that's bad. So what I had to learn in my 30s was how to spend money, because I was your classic money hoarder. But I thought I was doing well, like, I've got savings. But how did that impact my lifestyle? Very negatively. Like, I would judge myself at the supermarket. I was the least generous person out of my friends, which gave me a lot of shame. And I learned how to spend money. And that was a very big one for me. That put me in the 4Fs all the time. Every time I'd spend a little bit more on myself, oh my God, that was the worst.
So you had to do that incrementally, just a little bit more, open the faucet, just a little bit more, check in. Yeah. How is this going? What is it bringing up? What do I need to work on? Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, I've done all these years of healing and all these years of work, but then now we moved to New Mexico. And the thing is that a year and a half ago, we also moved to Australia. So the past 18 months have cost a lot of money, and I can feel my nervous system going into like the downward spiral, even at the grocery store now. But even though our financial reality is very different to where I was as a child, I still have to do the things to show my primal brain that we're safe. Whether it's turning like at the supermarket, doing a body check-in, I love that. Or looking at our financials and just showing myself like, look, it's okay. You're going to be okay. Yes. So like that is also a sign of doing the work and for it working. But also, like, if you didn't do the work for little things, how are you going to manage to do the work when the big things happen, right? That's something that not many people talk about. Like, just being in the online world.
Well, again, it comes back to, I was trained as a somatic therapist. So, this comes from that. One of my teachers, Christine Caldwell, her work was the moving cycle, and it was teaching people how to unravel from any addictive patterning, addictive patterning, right? Addictive movement patterning, addictive life patterns. And I was like, okay, even addictive money patterns. So, for me years ago, I really couldn't, I had mentioned I couldn't listen to when I was hungry and when I was full. I had overridden that for so long. So I would overeat because I enjoy food. I love food. But I would tend towards more overeating, right? And then give myself a stomach ache. And so I learned how to unravel that pattern by catching it in the moment or catching it after, and then bringing more awareness in the moment, and then bringing more awareness before I was feeling the urge to, want to give myself a stomach ache. And why did I want to give myself a stomach ache, right? So it's similar to, even overspending or just any of our patterns, or, being so afraid to spend, or, having such a big reaction when you're going to spend any money. So I don't think, it's okay. I personally don't, as I said, I don't think our emotions are going to go away ever, period. But we can catch them quicker. We can catch them in the moment. We may not, that first initial reaction may still come up, hopefully smaller and smaller and smaller, but it still may come up in different life phases or transitions. For you in the grocery store, right? It was coming up.
Yeah.
And so then you need to do all your stuff, bring all your tools in, do the body check-in, find your safety. Where is it? Where can I locate a teeny bit somewhere in my body right now?
Can I anchor into that feeling, like that ray of sunshine, or Deb Dana calls it glimmers, which I really love.
I love that. Glimmers of okayness, glimmers, right? And then I love that you go practical too, because I love the practical parts. Let's look at the numbers and just see. And have a little date with, we're going to look at the numbers and we're going to let this in. We're going to see if we can let it in and, let it into our body, let it into ourselves. Yeah.
I have a question. I just want your perspective. So, a lack of financial resources is a very obvious reason why so many of us suffer from financial anxiety or financial shame or whatever it is. But from working in this industry for several years, it has become obvious that it's deeper than that. And so many people that come to me are utterly perplexed why their money stuff didn't just magically go away when they started making more money. Mm-hmm. Actually, what is happening is that the more money they're making, the more their money stuff becomes heavier. Yeah. So I would love your perspective on this.
Yeah, I don't know if I say it in that exact way because, as I mentioned, I work with folks from all different income spectrums, mm-hmm. right? And so I see anxiety. I see all the same set of emotions across the board at all different income levels. And in order to be in my programs, my first program is $850, but if you do it with a buddy, you can split that, or it's $500 mm-hmm. per person. So while I lowered my price point on that years ago, and it's been the same for 11 years. So it is accessible to a lot of people, but it's all still relative, right? That may be too much for some, but it's still, that's very, very, very accessible. So I'm not necessarily working with people at the lowest end of the income spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. I'm working with they have to have some money to do the programs, right? Yeah. And my private work obviously costs more, and my mentor program with other professionals costs even more, right? So I can't say that, I'm just working with folks who are lower income, but so I see, anxiety at all levels. I see anxiety mm-hmm. with folks who have a lot of money. They're afraid they're going to lose it, right? And mm-hmm. they have and I've definitely worked with people who came from really wealthy families who were told in life in general, you shouldn't have any issues. You have money. Like, what's the issue? What's the problem? And they have all the normal stuff. They have
all the normal stuff.
All the normal stuff. Of working with being embodied, with their body, with health. People still die. People still all the normal stuff of life still happens. Now, yes, once you make more than 75,000 or 50,000, depending on where you live, that helps. That does literally help. It does take the edge off. It just does. Now,
it does, it's reality.
There's a reality, definitely, to meet your basic needs. You definitely can get a calm in your nervous system that you did not
100%,
have before. You can access a safety, certainly, right? You're not in survival mode all the time, right? So there's that. Then there's this piece of what are the set of stuff or issues or patterns or thoughts that come up when you start making more, and that's mm-hmm. a whole thing. People are afraid that they're going to spend it. People are afraid they're not going to honor it and be, mindful of it or be good stewards of it. They're afraid they're just can they trust themselves? They've created problems or mistakes or messes in the past. Well, how can they trust themselves? I'm right. I'm just riffing.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's all the stuff that's in that chapter in my book of the deeper themes that come up around power dynamics, around responsibility, around enoughness, around safety and security and our value, right? And on and on. So all of this stuff still comes up. I don't know if it comes up more or less. It just comes up, it just is mm-hmm. as soon, because I think we think it is going to go away, right? Like if we just,
we always, that's what people think. I'm just going to make more money and it's going to go away. I'm like,
well, that's a subset of my community, is the folks who really believe their answer to everything is I'm just going to make more, right? And now they're my good earners. They're my high earners. They don't have issues with earning. But here's the thing, or just earning more is not going to solve everything, right? As I've seen over and over and over. You have to pay attention more. You have to pay more in taxes. You have to be a steward of more, You have to then determine where's all the money going? Where are all the buckets? You have to be intentional. You can still totally overspend, right? Your livelihood, your standard of living, or what you want. I have 3 tiers that I work with. And whenever I'm creating a what people call a budget, it's the bottom line basic needs tier. I want you to meet that. The second tier is what I call comfortable. And the third tier is ultimate. I like to do a little planning and visioning within those 3 tiers. Where am I at? There were years where I was just trying to meet basic needs, got that covered. Then I was trying to move into comfortable, got that covered. Now I'm, and then I'm always hovering. There's some, right? For me in my world, it's not make more, save more, give more every year. Hopefully you have some of those years, but guess what? Life happens, health happens, death happens, pandemic happens, right? And so we have to really be realistic within all of that. So just to come back to, right, that there's all the money stuff comes up depending on what we're working on. And I mean, really, I just scratch the surface of what I see people working with when they start making more. Can I sustain this? Really, what am
I worthy of this? That was my big one.
So I, told you that I had my year-long program. I've had it for 11 years. Now, a decade before that, I've been doing this work for 22 years. I did not a year-long version, but I did weekend workshops and 6-week groups and 3 months and 6 months, right? I did it. So I've been doing that work for 22 years. And then for years, other therapists and money coaches and financial professionals have been saying, when are you going to do a certification? And I kept saying one day. I thought I'd be ready when I turned 50, but I kept researching certification and I just kept coming to no, so I don't like to be under the umbrella of anything, and that's, so I got the master's degree, but then the next hoop to jump through was getting licensed. And I was like, nope, I'm not getting licensed, so when I kept researching the certification, it was, I don't like to be under anyone's umbrella. So why would I want people under my umbrella, and why would I want to be overseeing people that closely? I don't. I love mentoring. I love mentoring, but I don't want to have them meet requirements and check off a list and right. So anyway, I was finally ready last year when I turned 54, right? So I realized the structure, it's 4 months. And my first group, I thought my goal was 20. My first group was I'm going to get 20 people. We wound up getting 40 people for that first group. Okay. So I was like, this is amazing. Now it was 40 still felt small to me because my programs, the year long has always had a couple hundred, even up to 500. So this felt small. The second time I ran it, my goal was 20 again, but I thought, well, I'll get 40, right? I got 17. So this is what I've learned from that. There's a few things. Was one, I've done a lot of work on myself to know that my value and my worth has nothing to do with the results of, my sales or my program signups, right? So that's number one. Number two, hey, I really like a smaller group because it's more intimate and I get to know people. Okay, well, I might have to raise the price a little bit if it's going to be smaller, right? There's that. There's also, oh, hey, I haven't really done a lot of outreach marketing, right, in a while. So I have a marketing issue that I need to look at. And you prompted me to do a few things. So you posted saying that My Art of Money book was your favorite. And then I just was like, hey, I'm going to ask her if she wants to interview me, right? And then from there, I was like, hey, I hate cold call emails. Even if my team does them, I'm just going to put up a little image on social media saying, hey, does anyone want to interview me on all things financial therapy? And I got 20 interviews scheduled, from that one little post, which is so much better than trying to spend hours doing cold call emails. So I'm doing more outreach and in a way that works for me, and I love it. But I think that story hopefully just, shares some of the deeper work.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah.
It's such a good example for people listening, because most of the people listening to this podcast are coaches and mentors themselves. So when we don't make our sale or whatever outcome that we wanted mean anything about us, that keeps us in this openness. It keeps us in what's out there. What can I learn from this, and what can I improve?
Yes.
As opposed to me in my early days in coaching, I used to make it mean so many things about myself.
Of course you did. Nice. We all do. That's the beginning of anyone's business.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was hard.
It is hard. I remember, yes. I remember, that's when I was like, running a business is a psycho-spiritual practice. It challenged me so much.
Oh, me too. Oh my God.
And, yes, we all go through that phase. We do.
Yeah. I had a launch 2.5 years ago, I think, that didn't really do anything. And I was in bed for 2 months from it. That was really hard, but I learned a lot. I mean, it was for a reason, but wow, I made it mean so many things about myself.
Well, here's the thing. We are the keepers of the meaning, right? So at the beginning, we really give it to ourselves. We go after ourselves so hard, we make it so personal. It's about our value and our worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about that at all. Down the road, we realize there are other factors, and what are they? And then we put meaning onto it, but it's not, I think back in the day, we certainly I shouldn't be doing this work, or, I'm not good enough, or I'm not
cut out for this.
all this stuff. And my God, being cut out for starting and growing and running your own business, you have to have tons of chutzpah. You have tons of determination.
I love that word.
Chutzpah. I even use chutzpah. You have to, you just have to really, you fall, you get up.
Yeah. And I had my dad's voice as my inner narrative, which wasn't very helpful. So that particular situation prompted me to ooh, I have been living with that narrative. How beautiful. Let's heal that, deal with that before we try to get up, because that was what was the background noise. You're not going to do it. You don't amount to much. You're whatever nice things he used to say to me as a child. So that was the big revealing factor of oh, I swept that under the rug and it's now out. How cute. Okay. Got to work on that.
Exactly. So I think, for a while, people were surprised I was going through the doorway of money. Hey, I thought you were working on sexuality and intimacy and death and grief and, but I was like, you know what? All the same stuff comes up through the doorway of money.
God.
So
I know, right? Yeah. It's such a volatile, yummy topic. I mean, we can cut through the bullshit straight into the core wounds when we see how somebody moneys. Tell me how you money. I'll tell you what your core wounds are. It's such a shortcut.
It's a shortcut, but my God, we need, as we are, it's so tender. It is delicate. It's, for you to go right into your father's critical voice, because we're going to go to the younger parts. And so who's there? And right, what was safe, what was not safe, and what were the voices and the messages, and what did we declare,
Mm-hmm.
and what parts of us died. About ourselves, and what parts of us did get cut off or die at those young ages, and that we need to go back and pick up those pieces, pick up those bones. Yeah.
What you're saying is just exactly what I went through, what my clients go through. It's you're not putting numbers next to each other and hope that the spreadsheet's going to come up as you did it, bingo. It's more as you call it, inner child healing, or whatever you want to call it, retrieval, soul retrieval. It is a whole wide array of stuff, because it's not really about that piece of plastic or the piece of paper. It's so tender.
And it isn't, right? I always say
it isn't.
because there are financial literacy things we did not learn in grade school and up in small increments. Right? Most of us, or we learn parts and pieces, and then it's not about money because it's all the deeper things. Yeah.
What is your observation and perspective on what's really prevalent out there in the online space about money? So not the you got to kind of follow a budget kind of thing, but the other side of the pendulum that I mentioned earlier in this interview.
So I think for me, like all those worlds were just missing pieces and parts. They're doing one thing. They're doing the manifesting piece. Now, I used to use that word a lot, manifesting, and I don't know if I dislike that word. Oh, the law of attraction. That's the word I was looking
for. Law of attraction, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Right? And the law of attraction can be really harmful, and it's missing a lot of things, right? It's just visualize it, it's going to happen. It does not take into account systemic racism, how our systems are set up. It doesn't take into account, like, that's one piece. Every once in a while I come across someone who's doing good work in there, who's aware of the larger macro level economic system piece, right? So you just got to study them, right? Because I don't want to put them all in the same bracket.
Gotcha.
But, right, there are a few people that are doing some decent work. But for me, it's they're only doing work on the earning piece. Like that's what they're, earn more, earn the 6 figures, earn the 7 figures. That's what they're focusing on. So it may have a place, but my God, is it missing so much? Just like the tough love, there's only one way, a right way. The other side, And so that's why from day one, I needed 3 phases. I needed a holistic approach. I needed to merge emotional literacy with the financial literacy. But, for me, for some people, manifesting piece kind of comes up in the 3rd phase, which is the money mapping. I used to call it life vision planning,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I used to call it life vision planning, which is what phase of life are you in? What's your budget money map these days in those 3 tiers? What are you going for? But really, what quality of life do you want to have? What do those numbers represent? Where's your health at? For me, I had my first and only son at 40. We had a major complication that we made it through, right? And then I needed recovery time. And then I had a few years in my 40s where I was like, I'm strong again. And then I went into perimenopause. And, so I've had all the health stuff. My God, and people have far worse health things. I've had a lot of normal health stuff challenging for me that really affected how I was crafting my business and life and what numbers I was going for, and all of that. So I like the life vision planning piece as long as it really incorporates your values and life phase. Yeah. Right. So just needed a more holistic approach. Like, hey, if you're into mantras, great. But don't just do mantras,
Please right? Don't just do mantras. Please.
Exactly. Like that's not, in my world, oh my God, that's just missing so much. But for the quick fix people, they may go there and do their mantras and just focus on the earning piece. And again, for me, with our relationship to money, which is a relationship, an important relationship, right? It's one of the big ones, right? It's, I always say, it's like a garden. If we're going to use that metaphor, it needs care, attention, and nurturing. And how much time and watering are we going to do? We don't want to overwater it. But most of us underwater it, or there's the whole spectrum. Yeah. So it's a really important relationship, and there's lots of parts and pieces, to it. There's your money story. There's the money emotions. There's the family of origin and inner work, right? There's do you know your numbers? Do you have a bookkeeping system? I couldn't believe that I fell in love with bookkeeping systems years ago.
I can't believe that either. I mean, you like QuickBooks. I cannot stand QuickBooks.
But see, that's why there's
QuickBooks.
There's no one system. Unfortunately, what is intuitive for me is not going to be for you. I wish it were so. Like for all the creative people, for all the deeper thinkers, and this is the right system. It's not how it works, So
I know, right? It's not like one system.
Nope. There's no one perfect intuitive system. There just isn't. So there's just so many parts. And, usually I'll say the last thing is that when we're looking at this money, it becomes this huge mountain, scary mountain, right? But the only way we're going to go up it through the switchbacks and have our breaks and camp and, do another one is right, slowing it, and at the beginning it's like, oh my God, there's so many fires. So, get some support if you feel the urgency or have some fires. If you need to file taxes or have someone help you with previous years, there are support people for every single piece.
On that note, Bari, thank you so much for joining us today on the Money Healing Podcast. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun and it was an honor.